Um, my presentation today is going to be very simple. It's going to be with a focus on the effects of globalization on the region, but mainly Central America. I'm going to talk about the association agreement with regards to the last negotiation that we have had between Europe and the Central American region. The Central American region that we negotiated with Europe is six countries. It's Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, as well as Panama. For the first time in the history, and for the first time ever since this planet Earth came about, and in the first time of this universe, there is an agreement region to region between Europe and Central America. There is no such agreement in existence today. You might have one with Europe and Brazil, Europe and Chile, Europe and Mexico. You're about to have the beginning of a negotiation between Europe and the United States. But there is no other association agreement between Europe and another region. The only one in existence today is the one with Central America and the countries that I mentioned before. Be that as it may, there is a history between Europe and Central America. It has not been easy to negotiate this association agreement because it entails that we have to sit down amongst ourselves, Central Americans, and we have to have a common position before we sit down with the Europeans, or before we sat down with the Europeans to negotiate. In other words, it was a very, very long process, very difficult process that started back in October of 2007 with the first round of negotiations, and that was done in Costa Rica. That's a little history, and a little bit more of history is the fact that during the first semester of 2007, the presidency of the European Union was in the hands of the Germans. The Germans were they demonstrated their leadership, as they have demonstrated their leadership in Central America and the region. They demonstrated their leadership by pushing that the negotiations would start as soon as possible, and that's the reason why we started the negotiations during the Portuguese presidency, the follow-up presidency of the European Union, and it was successfully, and those negotiations were successfully concluded last year in on June 29th, 2012. I was fortunate enough to be there from the beginning until the end. Usually on those long negotiations, sometimes you're only at the beginning, you're only in the middle, or you're only at the end. In my case, I was very fortunate enough to have had the honor and the pleasure of being there from beginning to end, as well as very few negotiators from the European Union lasted this long. Be that as it may, the association agreement has three pillars, mainly political dialogue, cooperation, and commerce. An association agreement is the integration of Central America to the global economies, because through the association agreements, we're able to set up bridges towards other regions. Let's say, for example, when it comes to commerce, we're able to negotiate certain tariffs, certain products, so that they come into the European market, as well as the European market can have access to our markets in Central America. Indeed, not only those products can go to Central America, but since we have in the area of commerce, free trade agreements such as with the United States, we have one with Colombia, we have one with Mexico, and other countries in other regions. So those products are able to go to those other markets as well. When it comes to the political dialogue, we have there very important clauses that today are part of the global policies, political policies, such as strengthening of the multilateralism system through the United Nations. We have respect for human rights. We have the fight against terrorism. These are all current topics that you see in the news every day. In the area of cooperation, we have cooperation on the education side, on the health side, and as well as other areas, especially the environment. That's another area that is very important for us. When it comes to the political dialogue as well, I should say and I should mention that for us and for the Europeans, the political dialogue and the cooperation is more important than the commerce. The association agreement doesn't have an emphasis on the commerce side, though it is important, but in our young democracies, the political dialogue and the cooperation is very important so that we can strengthen our democracy as well as the integration of the region. As you may see, Germany has been able to maintain and help out in the integration of Europe with the chaos that we have seen in Greece, Ireland, Spain, and Italy, and other countries. We have had our share of problems also in Central America. But the good thing about it is, in spite of all those problems, our integration has been maintained, much as in Europe has been maintained with all these crises going around. It is, and with great pleasure that I say that I'm proud to be a Central American, as you are very proud to be from Europe or any other region or countries. And to me, it is important that I elevate this to you in the sense that democracy is very important. You're not going to have opportunities in the future if you don't strengthen them. I think that we have started a process that has taken us 6 years, approximately 5 years and a half, the negotiations. And now this association agreement has to be approved not only by the Congresses of our Central American countries, which, by the way, in record time, the Central American countries have approved this in the legislative branch. Different is the process that Europe has to go. Out of the 27 member states, very few countries has approved the association agreement. While the Europeans don't approve the association agreement through their legislative bodies, it won't be able to implement the political dialogue and cooperation side. As of August 1st, I am proud to say that the association agreement will not take a U-turn and go back. In other words, we're going forward. I am proud to say that as of August 1st, the implementation of the commercial pillar has been implemented because it only needed to be approved by one Central American country. But anyways, in the end, all of them approved it. And I think that we are hoping that the fact that Germany has led the way in approving the association agreement both in the Bundestag and the Bundesrat is going to have a domino effect in the rest of the European members. I think at this time Czech Republic has also approved it, and I didn't know the reason why I was sent here from Brussels, but now I know the reason why. Because we had to do a lot of lobbying here in Germany so that we can prove to the NGOs or civil society in general that this was not the perfect association agreement, but rather a mechanism to strengthen the bi-regional relationships. It is important to say that this agreement involved civil society a lot. We involved civil society during every single round of negotiations that we had. Not only in every single round of negotiations, but we involved civil society through the European Unions with the European Union civil society. Each one of our countries involved civil society during the round of negotiations. And after every round of negotiation, we summoned civil society in general from Central America and Europe, and we discussed what we had negotiated. It is an agreement that was amply discussed. It wasn't a shortcoming, or there wasn't a short end of the stick or anything like that. By all means, no. This is an association agreement that was amply discussed, and therefore there shouldn't be any reasons why it shouldn't be approved by anybody, neither the member states nor the Central Americans. It is important to say now that though the association agreement has been approved, it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that can be implemented, because the association agreement has different level of clauses, and one of the clauses are meetings between presidents, congresses of Central America and the European Union, meetings between civil society of Central America and civil society of Europe, and whatever changes deemed necessary. It is like a contract. You can change them and make amendments. It's not like it's written in stone and it can't be changed. So therefore, I'm glad to say that Central America is integrating itself to the global movements of the world. And, but above all, we may be small. We may only be 55 million people, but I don't see any other region in the world, and I don't see any other country in the world doing what we did. 6 different minds, 6 different interests, 6 different types of countries. We speak a common language, but we did it. No one else has. Thank you. I believe that there is a period of questions and answers.
Okay, so first, do you have any questions or comments? Yeah?
Thank you very much. I'm wondering if you could speak about some of the challenges that were encountered in bringing these 6 minds together, and some of the methods that you used to overcome them.
If I tell you, I would have to kill you. No. It is the same question that some other countries that are entering this process of negotiation with the European Union would like to know. There's a future short-term negotiation that is about to start between the United States and the European Union. That one is going to be a difficult one because of the interests that are involved. In the case of Central America, specifically, it took long hours, many days, before we could sit down and say, this is what I want, and this is what the other one wants, and trying to arrange a consensus of the position that we're supposed to have with Europe. It was very hard, because it's much like in a family. Your sister may not think the same way you do. And it was the same way in Central America. And trust me, I had long hours, and I had to fly many, many times, maybe twice, 3 times a month to Central America, so that we can go to the internal Central American meetings. And we have a system whereby we would have like a pro-temporary presidency of the negotiations, so everybody could have a chance to coordinate and have a say in the way the negotiation should go. Let me tell you, it wasn't easy. It was very hard, but it was harder to say, okay, I want 100% access, let's say, for example, of the meat industry to Europe. And I don't want to share that 100%. But other countries have the right to share that 100%, as a hypothetical example. But it was bigger for those who had a big interest in those areas to say, okay, fine, I will give in and I will share the piece of the pie. So basically, what I'm saying is you have to be humble and you have to have the respect for your fellow sovereign countries, that they also have a right. I think that the piece of the pie is so big that there's a big enough piece for everyone. The secret was communication, understanding, cooperation, and sharing.
I just one.
I think you had bilateral agreements before this, this European Union and your countries. So why it was important? Is it, benefiting your countries? Thanks.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
But I think before this agreement, you had bilateral agreements already, I believe. So why you go for another this kind of association agreement? Is it more benefiting for your countries or more benefiting for European Union countries? How do you think?
Very good question. During my negotiations, I always said to the Europeans, we are not your little brother. We are not your little sister. We are an equal partner. They understood. They liked the position that we had in Central America because though it was not as big as an opportunity as the market that China offers or that Brazil offers, but it was more like the political statement. What does Europe mean? Europe means, after all the conflicts that they have had during the past century, means integration, means understanding. It means a dialogue in between the different countries with the different languages, with a different interest. We gave them an opportunity to have success of their own integration system. Their own European system was able to, by the mirror image, successfully have that mirror image in Central America and with the Central Americans. You mentioned my bilateral position. You know, it's two different worlds. When I talk bilaterally with somebody and at my embassy, and it's very different when I have my entire staff talking in a conference room. Both have been interesting for me. Don't ask me which one I prefer, because I like to eat and I like everything. I would like everything. But to me, it has been a very interesting time during my 5.5 years in Brussels, I had a ride going to the embassy in Washington, D.C., but I'm having a more joyful ride right now in Germany. Though I didn't think I was going to be able to tackle these topics that are more of the integration, European Union, but hey, Germany is leading the way in Europe, and we're in the capital as to where everything is happening. And my job and my chapter in Brussels was done, and I opened a new one here in Berlin. I don't regret it. I'm very happy, but I'm even happier to be working with my colleague, who's my Deputy Chief of Mission, Ambassador Vania Garcia, who's here present with me. And we have known each other for many years, and that made a difference, because you're not able to choose your people at the embassies, but rather they choose you to go. And this career of mine is like the military. You have to be obedient and not deliberate. You just have to say, yes, sir, I'm going there and I'm going to do my job. But seldom do you have the pleasure of working with people who you know and you like very much. I would like to share this moment right now with my ambassador, Vania Garcia, whom I would like for her to stand up. And I would like to, an applause, because I have been successful here in Europe, and I have been very successful here in Berlin because of her. She has been a very powerful person who has supported my job and the job that we're doing together. I think there's one more question.
Good afternoon. You have spoken before about strengthening the dialogue between the civil society from Central America to the one from the European Union. How do you foresee to do this, or what kind of activities this agreement or these associations has in mind for strengthening the dialogue between the two civil societies?
Very easy. First of all, civil society, like countries, like in families, they have different minds, different positions. The association agreement opens up the dialogue for that discussion. But just because you have a way of thinking and the way you think things should be, doesn't necessarily mean that that's the appropriate way. The key word here is consensus. Though somebody from civil society may have a position, though they might have a way of thinking or an ideology fight, doesn't necessarily mean that it's the consensus of the majority. If there is no consensus of the majority, the changes can come about. It is democracy. And the democracy of our systems today is being translated to the free trade agreements that we currently have, and in this case, the association agreement. It may not be perfect, but it sure heck beats a lot of other systems that we have out there.
Thank you for your speech. On the civil society matter again, I was wondering if you could give us an indication of what were the main concerns raised by civil society during the negotiation period of the agreement from both sides, if there were the similar concerns or if they were radically different in Central America and in Europe.
No, they were very similar. You know why? Because civil society, they're a very tight group. there may be an NGO in Honduras and with a fight on environment. And they have sister NGOs throughout the different countries and throughout Europe as well. So therefore, they have like the same talking points, the same speech. In that sense, they're very well organized. And I have a lot of respect for them because I don't think that countries are sometimes very well organized as they are. And I think that they have a way of saying things, they have a way of doing things, they have a way of expressing themselves and their ideas. They might not be in agreement all the time with the policies that the government is having or that the governments are having, but there is one interesting story that I would like to share to make you understand how far have we come in Central America when it comes to tolerance. We have a lot of NGOs that are, let's say, for example, Europeans, that have sister NGOs in Central America and in Honduras. There was an NGO that was receiving funds from the European Union, and in one of our round of negotiations in Central America, that NGO actually said all the negative things that I've never heard in my life about the European Union. So the NGO was, well, I have to be very careful in saying this. The NGO was being funded by the European Union. However, they were able, willing, and they had the freedom to say whatever they wanted about the European Union in a trade negotiation round in Central America. That is tolerance. We're very tolerant. We may not always agree. We're not supposed to agree. That's why we're human beings and we speak different languages and we think differently. But in the end, tolerance is a key word here. I guess I didn't do a good job because there's a lot of questions.
Thank you for your answer. I have more general question. Recently, I finished a book by Thomas Freeman. He's also dealing by effects of globalization, and the book is World is Flat. And main idea of the book is basically that world is a level playing field in terms of commerce, where all competitors have an equal opportunity. What do you think about this perspective?
First, before I leave, I'll jot down the name of the book so that I can go read it. Second of all, what do I think about globalization, if I understood correctly?
Yes, and effect on commerce, and if it brings equal opportunities to companies.
Like I said at the beginning of my speech, there is no perfect free trade agreement. There is no perfect association agreement. The important thing is that in this case, particular case that I'm speaking about, the association agreement between the European Union and Central America, is that there are clauses that you can modify and make them better. With regards to how balanced it would be for companies, you said, let me tell you that a story. If you want change, you have to get involved. If you don't get involved, your voice will not be heard. If companies want to get involved, they should make their voice and interest be heard in both Central America and Europe. I have a very specific case which could be considered a case study. There was a company in Central America that after the negotiations were done, they wanted change on the text of the negotiations. They were convened, they were told as to what the negotiations were all about. If they didn't take their steps to be heard, and by the time they wanted to be heard, it was too late. So basically, you're asking me a superficial question as to how balanced, how equal can be the system for all these companies. And that can only be measured with time. And since the implementation was of the commerce side, since you're talking about commerce, the 1st of August, I cannot tell you scientifically how it is, but I can tell you hypothetically how I see it. And it's very simple. If you don't raise your voice, and if, like in politics, if you don't go put your vote in, and you don't help democracy choose the right leaders, and if your voice is not heard, then it's your own fault.